We know the standoff with China at the LAC continues. The Indian government, in fact, went ahead and imposed a temporary interim ban on 59 Chinese apps. So that is the kind of acrimony that the two countries at this point are witnesses. In this backdrop, the US has made a statement, Australia has made a statement. In a way, is there a global coalition coming together to question China, to corner China? And is that likely to help India? That's what we're going to discuss in this live episode of Government Matters. I have with me Noenima Basu, who, as you know, tracks diplomacy for ThePrint. So do start sending in your questions right away. Noenima, so let's first talk about what the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, and then also talk about what Australia has said.
So Mike Pompeo he was basically talking about the fact that what China is doing, it's rising belligerence, whatever it is doing in Hong Kong, in South China Sea. And then he came to the fact that how the Chinese Communist Party was sort of, having a surveillance a kind of network through all these mobile apps. So he basically praised that step, and he said that, this is going to be good for India's national security and sovereignty.
Right. So, and Australia has also spoken against China, has pointed out the clashes at the LAC.
So Australia basically came out with its defense strategy for the year 2020 and then forward a 10-year look in which it said that, this is going to be a different kind of strategy. They actually boosted their defense spending for about 40%. And they stated very clearly that this is because of China they're doing it, because according to Australia, in a post-COVID world, it's going to be a dangerous world. That's the term that Prime Minister Scott Morrison has used yesterday. And he said that, he mentioned that the tensions that China is having with India and also, Hong Kong, South China Sea. So he said that every country should be prepared for things matters getting from bad to worse.
Right.
Because of an aggressive China.
Right. So, Noenima, earlier after the COVID pandemic sort of, burst out, and everybody was talking about how China played a very difficult role by not revealing that the pandemic was something which was possible. And now this has happened. In a way, is there a global coalition? Are countries coming together to corner China, to question China? And in that sense, is it going to help India as far as the standoff is concerned?
Yes, in a way, this is helping India, because we can see countries like Australia has been talking from the very beginning that let's just investigate where did the virus originate from, and that angered China a lot, because they didn't even mention China. So yes, and then now we can see Canada also talking about it. We can also see how New Zealand has gone against it. So basically, everybody is sort of having their own kind of pain points with China, and they're all sort of, having a common coalition kind of a thing. So that is definitely helping India.
So it gives a diplomatic push to India, at least in terms of perception.
That's right. I mean, even if India is not reaching out to them, although India is talking about the LAC tensions with the US, it has done with Russia, even with Germany. So for them, yes, they are doing that, and this is definitely helping India in an indirect manner, because all these countries are now realizing what it was to have a so-called strategic partnership with China.
Right. So, Noenima, I have a couple of questions on Twitter. Let me take those first, and then I'll move on to the questions from our YouTube audiences. Gaurang Modi, is in China's policy of pressuring India counterproductive by enabling closer Indo-US partnership? So, in the sense that is China pushing India closer to the US?
Well, it depends. That's not really how it works. US has been one of India's strategic partners. We've seen US on its own made India its major defense partner. With China also, India has always maintained this balance, the strategic balance. We've seen how Prime Minister Modi held two informal summits, something that was new, with President Xi Jinping. But then, yes, with China, the concern that India always had was about rising trade deficit, right? Which never sort of got addressed from the Chinese side.
Right.
Even under the UPA era, under Manmohan Singh, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, there was this white paper, a strategy paper of exports that was, designed to tell the Chinese side that, why don't you import more from us in terms of pharmaceuticals and IT products? But that never happened. And that was also one of the primary reasons why India stepped out of the RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Partnership Agreement. So that has always been a concern. So China never really pushed India towards the US side. China could have also addressed these issues, especially the border problems, which India and China has always communicated through all the 5-6 protocols and the agreements, but never really, addressed that problem.
Right. Khushi Burman, from a strategic point of view, the Kashmir jumble, US and other countries' reservation on that situation, what can we make of that as far as the global strengthening is concerned? So have they stopped questioning India about what happened in Kashmir and the situation in Kashmir?
Oh, well, China...
Post the abrogation of Article
post the abrogation of Article 370, we've seen the stance that US and China both had taken. China had been very vocal about it, criticizing India about the move, and whatever Home Minister Amit Shah had talked about Aksai Chin. So China had given a long lecture and a kind of quite an aggressive statement at the UNGA in September last year. And we've seen US had tried to play the balance out. US had always been saying that yes, abrogating Article 370 is an internal issue, but they've always, spoke against any rising of tensions between India and Pakistan.
Right. Sharmishta Upadhyay, the Five Eyes group is a kind of anti-China bloc. Is the world heading towards a Cold War or World War III?
Well, I guess, I think our editor-in-chief, Mr. Shekhar Gupta, talked about the Five Eyes Alliance in his Cut the Clutter yesterday. So yes, the Five Eyes Alliance.
So you can log on to our YouTube channel and watch that episode.
And that definitely needs to be watched. So maybe that Five Eyes Alliance, which he talked about, they're realizing the follies, by cozying up with China. Maybe that era is coming where they will now be distancing themselves from China.
Right. Aditya M. Mishra, how do we see our neighbors like Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka in order to counter China? Good, given that we had good relations with them in the recent past, but that equation now is also, sort of a little iffy.
Yes, that is
At
true.
least with Nepal.
With Nepal, yes. Also with Sri Lanka and others, because we need to see how, even during the pandemic, this sort of, Cold War was going on between US and China, that who will be giving aid to this to this neighboring countries of India more. But we also saw that Prime Minister Modi initiated a SAARC virtual summit where he created this SAARC fund. But however, what happened eventually was that when Prime Minister Modi came in, his focus was neighborhood first. Somewhere down the line, that focus sort of started getting a little, it was fading away within India's larger foreign policy initiatives. Then there was this discussion on connectivity, like the BBIN, which is the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal. So Bhutan stepped out of it. Now it seems that Nepal will also be going out. So I guess it worked both ways. China putting more attention in India's neighborhood, because India was also not putting the focus that needed to sort of, bring all your neighbors together.
Right. Prateek Shukla, how significant is Mike Pompeo's statement endorsing the Chinese app ban?
Well, in this kind of, where tensions are soaring, definitely this comes as, in favor of India, and this helps a lot in also to build a global discourse against what the Chinese Communist Party is doing.
There's a question from a viewer. Is it possible that India remains non-aligned like in the Cold War and gets the benefit like after it got after the Sino-Soviet War? But in this situation, India is right in the middle of this conflict with China. So,
yes, it is, and the era of non-alignment has really faded away, even though India has not stated that in as many words. And that is also because India is now part of a strategic alliance called the Indo-Pacific. India is now a party to the quadrilateral dialogue. All these strategic alliances are alliances that are minus China. That is not to say, and Prime Minister Modi has stated again and again, that Indo-Pacific is not aimed at, targeting China. Without China, there is no Indo-Pacific. But yeah, of course, and by becoming a major defense partner of the US, so the concept of non-alignment has definitely gone away.
Right. Chirag Majithia, if China can ban US software giants like Twitter and Facebook, why is the ban on Chinese apps against the WTO? Is there a question about it being...
Well, the fact that China is saying when you ban these apps, these go, these are like against trading norms, against international trading norms that govern e-commerce and other things. But it is also true that within the WTO, which is anyway becoming a defunct organization because we've just saw the Director General of WTO stepping down and they are now looking for a new Director General. The dispute settlement body has gone defunct with US not putting its weight behind it. And India was never party to the e-commerce dialogue anyway under the WTO. So it remains to be seen. Maybe China will take India for international arbitration, but I don't think they'll do that because they are also, having a lot of crisis to handle.
Right. Bir Charan Brar, is the Nepal PM resigning going to help the tension with China or make it worse?
Well, that depends. Nepal is having its own dynamics within its own political parties, and we've seen not just Prime Minister Oli, even Pushpakumar Dahal Prachanda is very close to the Chinese Communist Party, and we've seen the role played by the Chinese ambassador in Nepal. So that dynamics will depend whether Prime Minister Oli resigns or not.
Right. There's a question from Alshan Jose Prasad. Is India building a war chest by increasing fuel taxes? Why is there no indigenous research and development in weaponry manufacturing? Is that a question really for Snehish to answer?
I guess so. But I guess a lot of push is being given towards the indigenization of weapons and all. But that really has no connect to whatever India is facing with China and the world.
Right. Numan Ahmad Sheikh, will India join the RCEP?
That's an interesting question.
India has been lingering on for a while now.
Yes. So India has been party to the talks ever since the RCEP talks had started way back in 2010-11. And we've seen how Prime Minister Modi had traveled all the way to Bangkok last year. And even our External Affairs Minister Jaishankar had stated that time in Washington in a think tank that India will be signing the RCEP. But there was this concern then last time came up within the summit itself that maybe China will not give that kind of tariff leverage to India, and India had to step out. But recently, yesterday, the Thai Commerce Minister had stated that even without India, they'll go ahead and sign the RCEP. So that is interesting because even if all these ASEAN countries are facing problems with China, they are still willing to go ahead and sign the RCEP, which also includes Australia. And they've said time and again that the door is open for India. Whenever India wants to join, it can come and join. But right now, there is no thinking on it, at least within the Indian government.
Right. So, Noinima, tell me, we know there are these, tactical military talks that are taking place between India and China. The third round of Corps Commanders meet happened the day before yesterday. But what are the kind of talks that are taking place through diplomatic channels to try and de-escalate the situation at the LAC?
So we're seeing that, there are talks going on both at the military level as well as diplomatic level. And talks are happening almost every week. This is going to be a long haul for sure, but it has to be mitigated through, dialogue and more of, the disengagement will take place if you're having so many of dialogue mechanism, you need to, might as well enforce them. Because definitely from both sides have stated that war is not the option. So it remains to be seen how they settle it. And we can see that almost on a weekly basis, there are meetings at the commanders level, there are meetings at diplomatic level, so I'm sure they are making some progress.
Right. There's a question from an anonymous handle. In today's time and scenario, do you think any country would be willing to support India in any sort of conflict?
Well, yes, we've already seen that kind of assurance coming from France. So that is also an assurance that yesterday we could hear from Australia also coming in. They don't have to explicitly state it, but that's what the understanding is, that all these countries are with you in case there is a conflict.
Right. Nitin Sharma, the Corps Commanders meetings are not showing any positive developments for India. How come they're useful? Why are we continuing to have them if they're not? Since the first meeting to the third meeting, not much movement has happened.
Well, these meetings are not really, you don't have these meetings in full public glare. They do discuss a lot, and these are very sensitive matters that are not really discussed all the time also, not told to the media unless you have an outcome coming out. But we do know that the meeting was held in conducive atmosphere. Both sides were willing to talk, and both sides still agree to the fact that it has to be de-escalated, and there has to be a disengagement. So that's all that matters as of now.
Right.
Progress or not, will come to know when this disengagement really happens.
Right. Vipin Chandra, will the defense budget hike of Australia help India?
Well, it depends. That is Australia's own defense budget. They have stated India to be a key partner when it comes to Indo-Pacific. And there are these joint exercises that we do, which is the OSS Index with Australia, which is, gaining a prowess every year. So, yes, India is a key partner, and they've mentioned that.
Right, and I think that was a useful part of the strategy that they revealed.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, Noelima, giving us a glimpse into how globally is there some kind of a coalition coming together against China, whether or not it can help India in its standoff, in its face-off with China, which is happening at the LAC right now. Thank you so much for tuning into Government Matters, for sending in your questions. Don't forget to keep subscribing to our YouTube channel.